From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hello and welcome to the UK Psych Health and Safety Podcast. You've unfortunately or fortunately got me today, whilst my fellow presenter Kate is trying to work out some of the wonderful dynamics of podcasts and computers. So thank you for joining us, and I'm going to ask my person who's come onto this podcast to introduce who they are, what they do, and where they're from.
Hi, everybody. My name's Emma Meenan. I'm Head of Health and Safety at London Luton Airport.
And Emma, why have we got you on this podcast, eh?
We've been on these podcasts. We've actually managed to obtain the ISO 45003 certificate in psychological health and safety management. And Kate wanted to speak to me about, our journey into obtaining that accreditation or certification.
So how was it?
It was okay. It's been a journey. I think we've had a lot of positives come from it. It's definitely raised the bar of well-being and mental health management in LLA, and obviously there's been a lot of benefits from it as well, with regards to management buy-in and other positive things that we'll go through during this podcast. But yeah, it's been a positive experience, but actually it wasn't as difficult as it might seem daunting. But all you really do, if we already had 45,003 anyway, 45,001, we already had that, and we just integrated that part of the standard into our management system. And a lot of the things that we already had in place, for the kind of tertiary and secondary care, like our BUPA, occupational health, that kind of thing. And it's just recognising what you currently have, and then identifying where the gaps might be or where improvements need to be made.
So tell me, where was Luton pre 45,003? And obviously you had 45,001, but what do you think? Where were you in terms of psychological health and safety and well-being? Think you were doing okay?
I think with a lot of organisations, COVID, we was impacted by COVID, especially aviation, massively. But I know it's happened to lots of organisations. But COVID, we had a lot of people. We had reductions in staff. There was furlough. A lot of the operations stopped because the airports were closed. Then we reverted to hybrid working, so there was isolation and all the impacts of always being on and things like that. And then when we came out of lockdown, it was building back and recovering. So I feel that that was a priority to get the operations back up and running. Um, so I think that was kind of where we were before, and we identified, as with a lot of organisations, that mental health and psychological safety was really, really important. And I think the COVID pandemic kind of brought that into the forefront, really. And we kind of assessed where we were and understood that our managers really were key to the management of psychological safety in the workplace. And we hadn't really given our managers uh, in recent years the core skills about to have those wellbeing conversations, and how to undertake proactive stress risk assessments, although we call them wellbeing risk assessments, with their workforce. And actually, the way we've embedded that as a proactive response has really, really been positive.
And people took it on board straight away, did they?
Not straight away. It's taken its time, and it's still embedding. But we, developed a wellbeing management procedure, which is just a modification of our stress management procedure. But it's trying to put a positive. We want positive wellbeing, um, and with that, we developed a risk assessment process. So it's a proactive risk assessment process. So it's where our wellbeing lead meets up with the departments, where they have to undertake a risk assessment at least once a year. So where they get their team together, go through all the different aspects. So that's linked to the HSC stress management procedure, so demands, control, relations, etc. Identify where they might be what's going well and what's not going so well, and I think that was been really positive because employees feel like they're being engaged on matters. It's also helped managers to be a bit more self-aware of how how they act and how they behave can actually have an impact on somebody's well-being. So with the training that we rolled out combined with this process, and it's kind of ongoing with the our well-being lead engaging with them, it's been really really positive and well received by our employees.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting when you talk. You think about airports. You think about pilots. You think about the stewards and stewardesses. Host and but well, it's a big, massive conglomerate of organisations and bits, isn't it? Really, and it's not you don't you just it's not like just turning up. It's all the impacts that go with that, and in some very much a safety critical industry, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a big ecosystem of different organisations all working together, interacting.
And do you think that, I mean, with me old inspectors, that how do you manage that risk then? There are multiple risk factors, aren't there? But which ones do you, but in looking at the psychosocial element, did you have to, was there an education piece about re-educating people to think not just about the physical safety issues, which are self-evident in an airport environment?
Yes, yeah, it's understanding obviously that psychological issues can impact a safety risk really, and we're still on our journey with that, but it's understanding that effective management can reduce that risk. So yes, we've obviously incorporated it into our investigations. So accidents and incidents, we try and get the investigators and the teams to understand the impacts of that and whether there was something that's linked to health and safety. Um, our managers, obviously, we're bringing them on the journey with the stress management or wellbeing risk assessments. And our plans for the future is to kind of then reach out and kind of to our stakeholders and airport partners as well, just to kind of share what we're doing and, get us on this journey too.
I love the fact. I mean, we had this conversation me and Kate had about stress and the term stress and risk assessments and that, and the fact that you chose to use well-being, but you were assessing the possible stress outcomes. Was that intentional because there was a negativity bias towards the word stress, or I'm just fascinated?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does has a negativity, and actually, you're doing it because you want to promote positive well-being. So, it's understanding where somebody's well-being is at this time, but with a view to have a positive effect. Really, you want to reduce risk. Really,
And when you started, did you start from a blank slate in terms of understanding, or did you have specialists within your organisation you could tap into, or because I know people think, oh, I don't know, I need to have all these experts to get 45,003 done, but whether or not that's your experience, I personally don't think you need loads of experts. But I think someone has an understanding of it.
I mean, I've got a really good in my team. We've got my wellbeing lead who's extremely passionate about psychological health and safety and mental health. So we recruited her when we understand we wanted to move on the journey. Um, we recruited Samantha, and she helped to embed it and reviewed. But no, we just we enlisted with BSI, and they helped us do a gap analysis to see where we are. We already had and we'd already started our process with the risk assessment, wellbeing risk assessment review and management procedure. So we'd already started that, and I think having someone's really passionate and also kind of identifying that our managers were key. Also, we kind of spoke to and worked with Heather Beach, who helped us develop our training, and she rolled out our managers training with us, which Sam also was involved in to kind of communicate the procedure that we'd designed in house. So they kind of came together, delivered that training, and yeah, that was really positive. So that was a kind of external help we had and support really. But as opposed to looking at the gap analysis, we looked at what the gaps were. And I think we had quite a lot in place, to be honest. I think we had most of it in place. It's just identifying where things fit and maybe creating some policies just to show what we were doing, really.
Yeah, so it was you had systems in place. I think that's probably a good and I want to interested to explore because you did 45,001. You had that. 45,003 was designed specifically to enable people to you know I'm just trying not to blind myself here. um, um, to enable people to have the opportunity to transfer across. So when 45,001 was done, they go, oh, we didn't really look at psychological health and safety, which we
Mhm.
recognise, or psychosocial risk. So the rationale for 45,003 was that, but it was always supposed to be almost like a scaffolding kit, and it was, it attaches to the scaffold. Was that your experience?
It definitely was, yeah. There's definitely parts of the standard that are the same, but you just need to kind of recognise what you've got in place to what systems you've got in place, and for psychological health and safety management. There was a couple of extra sections that just bespoke to the 45,003, but there's a lots of crossover, and it's just recognising what you've got in place already and potentially what other extra things you need to put in place to kind of comply to the standard.
Because a
And it
lot of
is
people say, go
no,
on,
I
go
think, and
on.
it's just about embedding it really and being consistent. And I think as we move forward, it's just embedding that procedure, improving it where we can, and you know expanding it out to our stakeholders and airport partners where we can.
So what was the motivation then for you to implement and then certify? Had you had a case? Had you had a series of situations, or did it just seem that the right business thing to do?
I think it was because of the COVID. I think brought that to the forefront. We've already got 45,001. It does seem the right thing to do. We were experiencing lots of issues. You know, we weren't collecting a great deal amount of data as such, but it could be seen that people may be struggling. We identified there were risks to, the working life, and lots of, I don't know, demands on kind of workloads and things like that. So we identified that we needed to put a formal strategic plan in place just to manage cycle health safety. And with our experience in 45,001, we felt that it was just a natural way to go, really.
Yeah, it was music to my ears because um, there have been some that have not done 45,001. It's always helpful if you have. But the fact that you then think, well, okay, we're going to do this because this is the right thing to do, the right thing with your employees as well. So what steps did you then have to take to implement it? So you make the decision. So what were the steps the next steps?
So as I said, recruited a wellbeing lead, a dedicated wellbeing lead, to work in the health and safety team. We undertook the gap analysis to understand, what processes and initiatives we might need to put in place. We did an organisational stress risk assessment with our exec team to get their buy-in and get them to understand where they felt the risks might lie within the organisation. And then obviously we developed the wellbeing management procedure and the stress risk assessments template and our one-to-one stress risk assessment. So we have departmental stress risk assessments. We've also had a one-to-one um, wellbeing risk assessment template that managers can use to kind of, if they identify where there's somebody, you know, maybe in need of help or assessment, or it's also been used as a reactive piece if somebody has been off work, just to understand where the risks might be.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
What did you use for your risk assessment, just out of interest?
What did we use? Actually, where did we get the information from? We got these from the HSC, the management standards, and also IASH had some good information as well.
Right. Yeah, because sometimes people don't know where to go for it. So, I mean, obviously, I'm biased because I worked at HSC, and I think the management standards are wonderful. But I helped develop them, I guess. So I'm going to be always biased. But it's not the only way, is it? There are different avenues and different sort of tools and different options. As long as you're showing you're doing the risk assessment, because this is what your auditor would have looked at, wouldn't they?
Yes, exactly. And we just gave some prompts for them. There's a template, there's prompts for managers, things to think about and talk about with their teams. But our wellbeing lead has worked with in those departmental sessions to help coach the managers to understand how to hold those sessions. And then, if depending on the risk rating, if something's amber or red, then that will get reviewed more quickly. So it won't just be an annual thing, tick box done. It's a proactive way of managing, and there might be interventions by other teams like their health and safety, just support from that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been really, really positive.
And in that positivity, you've seen like interventions work fairly quickly, or
Interventions we've seen improve. So when we do a risk review, we've definitely seen an improvement in those group sessions.
and is it on the radar then of the senior management team now?
It definitely is, yes, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you went to take you now through the actual process itself, just to allay people's fears, was it okay? Was the auditing okay? Did you find the whole auditing experience positive, or so it if you've not been audited, I guess for some people can be quite like, oh, was this involved? But
No, it was fine. And actually, they're there to help you. That you want them to find things. If there are gaps, then that's the whole purpose. That you know you want to identify where there may be gaps or improvements that could be made, opportunities for improvement. Because you'd rather that than something going terribly wrong. And you know,
what was your favourite clause? Go on.
favorite clause. Oh God, don't ask me that. I can't remember what the clauses are.
Clauses 4 to 10.
4 to 10. That's it.
Yeah. So, but they're all that. Yeah, it's a sort of a program of work that you go through, as you'll explain. When you're going through different clauses, it's quite intense, isn't it? So 4.1.1. So you've got to show evidence,
Yeah, everything you've got corresponds with that standard, definitely. Yeah, we had to go through all of that. We've obviously got that all on a spreadsheet, but we already had that in place we basically just integrated those standards into the existing documents that we had, spreadsheet, to match up what we had in place. Yeah.
which is what we would have hoped would be the case when we were developing the ISO 45003. It's supposed to do that, but it's nice to see that it does it, and it was
It does
seamless.
work. And
Yeah,
I think going for an ISO can seem daunting, but not to get the 45,003. I think it's not as difficult as you might think, especially if you've already got 45,001.
yeah. And that's definitely how we expected it to be. Um, so you did the process. They did they found a couple of gaps, and you had to rectify them, or were you?
We didn't get any. We passed out. There was a couple of opportunities for improvement. Yeah, not even minors in the first one, stage one. Stage two, we had no non-conformities. A few opportunities for improvement, which we're working on or have worked on since. And yeah, then we were recommended for certification. So we've got our first.
Do you want to explain what stage 2 is? Because for those that are not familiar with I mean, I am obviously, but yeah. Oh, part one, part two, isn't it? That's right. Part one, yeah. Yeah.
So I'll tell you what our experience is obviously stage one or part one was a remote um, audit where we went through our management systems um, that met each part of the standard and told some questions for that with the auditor. And then they recommended we were ready to go forward to the stage two. So I think if you're not quite ready at that stage, they then say, actually, you've got a bit of work to do. We'll hold off on that. But for us, we were ready. And so then we went to the stage two. That was a couple of days virtual online with the auditor. And I think it was about 3 days on the site. And they met with us as a safety team and my wellbeing lead and also the different departments just to understand and speak to them to understand, how our systems had been implemented to see if they were being effective.
Yes, exactly. Because this is what the standard is about, really. I mean, and it's a beautiful illustration of what happened, which is, oh, we've got this standard, we've got these systems and processes in place, but do you people know about them? I guess, and that's what the second part two of the assessment process is to see, do people have what they say, and do people know where it is, and so that's a good thing. Like,
Yeah, we actually got really, really good feedback from the auditor actually on that. He was to us told us he was quite impressed with our audit and what we had put in place. It was one of the best audits they'd done for stage two, which was really, really positive. So because they have done a lot of work to kind of raising the bar on mental health wellbeing, yeah. I mean, obviously, I've spoken about the risk assessment, but there's lots of other things that we've implemented as well, just to, a whole program.
give us a taster of some of those other things then.
And so we've obviously revised our TRIM procedure, traumatic incident management procedure. We revised that, retrained a whole new set of practitioners. Another thing from since COVID, we've had and I think it's happened in lots of shops and things like that, is an increase in sort of workplace aggression and frustrations. I think frustrations of coming back from traveling, but I know it's been experienced in shops and things like that as well. So we, realised that we may get staff who may be affected by that. So we rolled out that procedure, not only for us, but also for some of our third parties. And then our wellbeing managers, we provide support as a reactive piece, really, after something may have happened, just to check that, they're psychologically where they are and, trying to mitigate the risk of any, long-term impact. What else have we done? We did a joint strategy day with our HR department because I think initially we found that I think it's quite common working in silos. We've kind of come together, not as one department, but in a strategy because, we all contribute to the kind of well-being strategy, really. You've got your learning development, you've got your D&I, you've got the psychological safety piece, culture, all of that kind of thing. So we kind of came together to define a joint strategy, which will be launched next year. We set up wellbeing groups, an annual wellbeing awareness plan, which had different kind of topics for each month, and that was defined by our wellbeing, also our mental health first aiders. We have a session with them on a quarterly basis, so we survey to say what topics they felt that would benefit the organisation, and that's how we defined our annual awareness plan. I'm trying to think what else. The risk assessments. We Sam put together a wellbeing hub on our SharePoint site, which is a multitude of resources and managers' resources around wellbeing management and resources for employees to go to, covering a range of different topics, dedicated wellbeing groups, and just increasing engagement with departments, really, on wellbeing topics. It really, really has raised the profile and, communication on wellbeing.
Wasn't it? No, I mean that when you start doing it, it's really there's massive things you can do, and it's really important, particularly around the trim work that you were
Mhm.
doing. In and particularly, if not just the major incidents, but the things that go
No.
with it. So
Yeah, it can be anything, just because, yeah, it doesn't always have to be major. Something can trigger something in somebody, and it's just recognizing that and just having a follow up, really.
yeah, and do you feel you're creating that culture of well-being and health and well-being that you? I know you did have it, but I'm just wondering, has the whole experience of ISO 45003 given you more impetus and more time for people to go, oh yeah, well, they'll buy into the programs of work that you're doing or things that you're doing?
I think, yeah, that as well as just by, seeing the benefits it's kind of joint really, seeing the benefits of the well-being risk management and, the communications around well-being. I think just it all combined has kind of definitely raised the profile and got buy-in from managers. Initially, they might have, it might have been seen as back in the day, seen as a bit of a fluffy thing, and now it's not. It's realised that it's intrinsic to organisations.
So, Emma, um, what are some of the outcomes like around sickness absence that you have seen or experienced?
So our mental health days lost has actually reduced by nearly 50% versus the previous year. We've also seen an increase of our mental health absence spells, which kind of indicates to us that um, people are more likely to report the reasons for absence as mental health, but they're not actually taking as many days off. So hopefully, the interventions and support that they're getting means that they're able to return to work um, more quickly. But they're more likely, so we're reducing the stigma. They're more likely to kind of put their hands up and say, actually, yeah, I'm not well because of a psychological reason or a psychosocial reason.
Well, that's brilliant, though, isn't it? Really, because that's what we
Mm.
want. We want people to do that, to break down that stigma, and to sort of. But it's fascinating that even just doing simple interventions, that all the stuff that you're talking about has now, because you're measuring it, you're looking at those changes. You're seeing some of the benefits. I'm interested to know, in terms of benefits, were they what you expected, or were there unexpected ones as well?
We've had managers proactively reaching out for support for themselves and their teams. Um, we've had the communications have enhanced. Also, departments have identified where there may be issues and came to us and engaged with myself and the wellbeing lead. Proactively wanted identified, where there may be um, what's the word, improvements or initiatives, positive initiatives. So they're kind of taking that on board. Um, Excellent employee feedback. Yeah, I think it's just loads of positive things, and I just think people well-being feeds into everybody, and everybody wants to feel good and be well. So why would you not want to?
Yeah, and have you, because you've been doing this education piece, has the mental health literacy of your workforce increased, do you think? Because you've been doing stuff on psychosocial risk, but you've been openly talking about mental health. Have you found, people are more likely to have conversations than they would have done in the past around mental health? Yeah, yeah.
Definitely, I just think, by talking about it more, getting them to understand and think, it can have an impact on safety risk as well as, in the workplace, as well as, the health of the organisation. Yeah, definitely, people are talking about it a lot more.
Well, which is what we want, because we've just been through a pandemic where we talked about it loads online, and then we came back to work and we go, "Oh, we're not quite sure we can talk about this here," and that. When you, what would you say is what's next for you, right? Because in the standards world, you're on the start of the journey. You've got the stand, you've got the certification, you've got ISO 45003. But what's next? Where do you think where's the next move that you feel you'll be going and or working on?
I think that we'll continue to embed it, the wellbeing management procedure. Also, we need to just get more data. Really, we've started to get a lot more, but we need to start collecting a bit more data just to try and inform. And we've identified that there's possible routes for that. Um, Also, obviously, I spoke about the wellbeing strategy. It's kind of launching that and identifying what our kind of key objectives for the next year will be. Um, and culture, I think, is another big thing. We're kind of embarking on a safety culture maturity assessment, and as part of that, wellbeing feeds, into that. So that will help us to identify. That involves surveys and things like that. So to identify that, we can use that to see what objectives we need to set for the next year.
I think that embarking on that sort of safety culture piece of work that you're doing, it's interesting because in the past, most safety culture would have had the absence of psychosocial risk in them. They would probably, whereas I mean, I'm assuming when you go through that program of work, you're going to be going, well, actually, we look at the psychological risks that are there, and that is both from a health perspective and also from a safety perspective. But I mean, that's a whole podcast discussion about safety, about safety culture, and that. One thing I'm interested now, you spoke about your team. How important was it to have a team that got this and actually having someone? I think you said Sam, who's your well-being. You know, did that make a world of difference having a point of contact, person whose job and role that was to facilitate the whole process of ISO 45003?
It was, yeah, probably one of the most key things that we had, really. Not only having a wellbeing lead dedicated to that rollout and to sort of the wellbeing initiatives at the airport. Also, just having a passion and dedication to it as well, and enthusiasm. But Sam has been a massive advocate, not only with helping with the risk assessment process, but also engaging with the departments. She gets out there. She gets, people reach out to her with issues. They go to her, with things to discuss and issues. Whereas that probably didn't happen before. She's a trusted person, and that's also a good, gives a good indication of where there may be issues or concerns in the organisation, and Sam can then link in with other areas to reach out for support.
And that's because she's also embedded in the safety team, which is an interest. I mean, sometimes I'm more controversial, but sometimes we drop well-being people in and we put them in HR and we don't put them in health and safety. The role is transferable; it goes across both areas. But I do think there's some real benefits from having a well-being person embedded in safety as well, because it's there, isn't it? It's health, it's psychological health and safety. It isn't just psychological health; it's psychological health and safety. So yeah, not
Also liaising with the other advisors and helping them to understand, and it's just, within the team, it's raised the profile, raised the understanding that, the level of risks.
and just for the audience, how many people do you have in your team?
I have 5 people in my team.
Oh, brilliant! So and there was everyone was sort of pretty much focused and sold out on getting through this process, I guess. So that's
Yeah, I mean, Sam led on the process, but we also, in the background, we're still trying to maintain our 45,001 management systems and all the other work we've got going on as well. So, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Now we're coming to the end, and normally what we do is if you could give yourself one bit of advice to our listeners, if it was your younger self or something else, what would it be when it comes to psych health and safety? But how would you sort of explain or say what's one of the absolute gold mines of information or stuff that's come out of this whole thing for you?
I would say be honest. Uh, if Try not to overthink things.
No, no.
Yeah, be honest. Try not to overthink things, and speak up
Beautiful. Just
and
exactly what I was.
talk to people. It's the same as
Exactly.
speak up.
You can talk at people. It's very important that you talk to people, because it's that, building relationships. Well, Emma, thank you so much for taking the time out to have this conversation. I'm so happy when I see someone that's actually got the certification, because it was a long process developing the ISO, but it was developed specifically for this reason, to make it easy so people can manage psychological health and safety in the workplace, at home, and that includes at an airport. With all the risk and everything, you can do this if there's a commitment, and that's that commitment of your team working together and having a dedicated person, I think is really, really important, and it's a great take home for our listeners as well. So I will shortly stop the recording, but I just wanted to let our listeners know you can listen on your various podcast options, or if you particularly want to see me and Emma, you can go on YouTube. Trigger warning: I do have a cut on my head and a cut arm, but where I was I needed to have better health and safety when I when I fell down.
Oh dear.
Yeah, nothing like observation, really, is it? So that's marvelous. So thank you, and I will say ta-ra for now.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.